All right, everybody. I want to thank you all for joining us again for another episode of the Servant Leader Coaches Bible Study. I am your host, Coach Chelsea, and I'm super excited, y'all. I'm laughing because Homegirl needed a minute, right? God ordains rest. And this teacher, it was the summer, and I took me 2 weeks. I took me 2 weeks to rest and revive and rejuvenate. And if there was one way to come back, I think today is the way, right? I told the servant leader that we'll have on in just a few moments, that I've been watching her for quite some time. And that's truly how it is. You know, we have been celebrating 3 years on this podcast, just letting God do what he does, right? And started in the pandemic, fast forwarded to just athletic professionals who speak about what it truly means to serve in the roles that we're in. And we do that by simply servant leaders saying yes. And today we have Coach Alex Sims with us. Sims with us. I'm sitting here looking at a message. Shout out to our very first servant leader, Coach Willie Simmons, who owes me something. I'm calling him out. He owes me something and I'm waiting on, and that's what I'm looking at. So forgive me, Coach. We have Coach Alex Sims with us. She is the head women's basketball coach at the University of Memphis. And I told her I'm super excited to just watch how God moves in her and watch what they do. We're now going to be fans for sure, now that she's a servant leader. But Coach, I want to thank you for your time. I think that is one thing that people miss. It is an amazing gift that once it's given, it can't be given back. So I thank you for spending this time with us. I'm looking forward to learning and growing with you. So I'm gonna close my mouth. I'm gonna pass the torch to you so you can unmute and say hello to our listeners, and we'll get this conversation started today.
Well, thank you for having me. And it's funny that you say you have been watching me because I've been watching you
Oh,
on
wow.
Twitter, things like that. Just following you and seeing what you've been doing. Because obviously, I wouldn't agree to do something if I didn't think I was, doing something with just a genuinely organic, good person. So I appreciate you doing this and having the coaches that you have on. Also, to that note, and it kind of goes hand in hand when you talk about servant leadership, because everybody on my staff, in some way, shape, or form, I was watching them.
Mhm.
I think that's what servant leadership entails, is doing something for somebody that was probably done for you in some way. And everybody on my staff, I watch them from afar. I watch them through social media, watch them when I coached against them. So, I think that's where, I walk in who I am, and I walk in faith, is when you look at my staff. So there were some questions with my staff and everybody being so young. My longest tenure assistant coach is 1 year, as far as being with me. I'm considered the old one. But I think that's where you talk about, giving back, um, you know, serving a purpose more than anything. And I absolutely love my staff and what they do for our program and for me just as a human being. I'm somebody who's very big on goals and somebody who's very big on fear. And I wear this bracelet. I actually got it at the Final Four. Psalms 118:6 is basically, I will not fear because God is on my side, essentially, is what it is. I have another bracelet that says, one of them says cool mom, but the other one says fearless. And I wear them in the way that where it says fearless, cool mom. I think sometimes, a lot of the times, what we don't know and the ignorance that we may sometimes have keeps us from getting to the next level or getting to the next thing. And it's usually more than likely that fear factor inside of us. But, this bracelet is a reminder for me each and every day that, I shouldn't fear because I have God on my side. Um, you know, in the way that, I'm a mom, in the way that I'm a wife, in the way that I mother my children, and in the way that I do my wife thing every day. I think it's just always important to serve a purpose in those aspects of our life, and not just worry about being a coach or being, the X's and O's on the court, getting workouts in, because there's so much more to what we do as coaches, but also, as leaders in our programs and in our communities.
Coach, I think that's so good. And first of all, I was sitting here and you probably saw my face like, oh, before we got on, we were talking about your daughters. And, I am a girl mom. And I smile at that, right? Because I tell people, we always dream, and for those that maybe didn't know, but most people, they wanted to have children. And so now that I'm a mom, definitely want to keep the discipline part there. But I think I'm the cool mom, right? And it's not by trying, it's just simply by just, we have swag to what we do, coach, but I think the other portion that you mentioned is just that fear and being fearless. And I love that because confidence is a huge thing. I was talking about this with a local coach down here in leadership, especially what I feel anyway, with young girls in sports now and making their transition to college, that fear thing is real, right? That confidence and fear is a lot of what I'm seeing, and having to truly, it's not the skill that they lack, it's trying to get them to not fear actually owning the gifts that God has given them, the truth. And so I want to start right there. As a coach, we're a lot of things. Right. And so a lot of people think, oh, well, she's in college, and so she doesn't have to do that a lot. But I want you to just talk a little bit about yourself as a servant leader and having to, build that mental toughness and that confidence, and expressing to your young women that, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, as the word says. So what are some of the things you do as a coach and a servant leader to manifest that into the hearts of your players?
I think it's always been important for our players to see me doing the things that, a woman should do. So, if they see me not confident, more than likely they're going to be confident. I learned from a couple of teams ago that my team reacted to how I was when I came in the gym. And just simply as opening the door and putting my big toe inside the gym, right away, they had a judgment on how I was. And I didn't realize that. But at the same time, when you think of, the image of God and the image of, who he is, you think of, well, how was he? And you try to mimic that. And I think now, not saying that I'm God or anything like that, but your players try to be how you are.
That's correct.
The same way we try to be, we try to walk the path in our faith. And so I had to learn that very quickly especially being a head coach, that, how I am reflects how they are. And, I think it's very important it's hard with this generation of kids, but letting them know that it doesn't matter what other people think. It doesn't matter the judgments. As long as you're doing the right thing, as long as you're making some type of positive impact, and as long as you're serving whatever purpose that you want to serve, those outside opinions, just don't matter at the end of the day. So, I can't say that there was necessarily anything to be done. I think the thing that needed to be done was to realize all those things.
I think that's so good. And I think that you are so right, when it comes down to the energy that those that we lead see, right? And so even to your point, I know that with your daughters, it's probably the same thing. I'll play with my daughter and she'll be 2 in September, and I'll smile really big, right? And just, she'll look at me and say, okay, like in her mind, I don't know why we're smiling, but mommy's doing it, so let me smile. And then here recently, I taught her how to do the sad face, right? More so to now get to the men in our family, right? To get what she wants, right? So I say, just do the sad face. And like this, she hits the sad face. But to your point, you're so right, because if I come into the gym and my kids, they'll know, they're like, uh-oh, coach, what happened? Did you have a bad parent-teacher conference? Did you, hey, y'all get it together because coach not feeling today? They feel that. But when I come in with energy and I come in ready to go, it sparks, just like anything else, it sparks and it hits off down to each one of the players. And so you're absolutely right when you say that, Coach Brittany Ezell, I'm always call her coach. She's no longer coaching at this moment, but she is a mentor of mine. I admire her. But one of the things she said on the podcast before, and all the time we speak, is if we want them to be a woman, they got to see a woman. And that's how you open that up. And I think that is so pivotal in servant leadership, but even branching it out to all of our listeners, to be inclusive. If we want them to be servant leaders, they have to see servant leaders. So like you said, coach, with your coaching staff, them watching you, even though you've been there the longest, they're watching what you do. They're watching how you're coming to the gym. They're watching your energy. And I think that's very huge, coach. That was right on point.
And I got,
when we talk about, no, go ahead.
I keep this on my desk, and we had Debbie Antonelli come in last year with our team at Gardner Webb, and here we go. Then she gave us these light switches.
Nice.
And she's like, keep your light switch on. And so mine, since I got this, I've never switched it off for that reason, because I feel like if I ever, turn who I am off, or, maybe I don't have energy one day, whatever it is, if I turn that off, I may not ever be able to flip it back on. I think, that's probably one of my biggest fears, is that I change who I am, the people around me change who they are, and then we can never get back to the foundation of what we were trying to build.
I think that's perfect. And I love that they even utilize that as a team building exercise. Sometimes we need that tangible approach, right? That evidence, and I'm reminded of the familiar scripture that says, let your light so shine. Right. So that men and women can see your good, works and glorify the Father that's in heaven. But if we are dull, if we are dim, right, how are we allowing ourselves to be able to illuminate? One of the things I always pray in closing is help us to illuminate, so that others that may not know you can find you. Well, how can people see the Christ in us if we're not letting our light shine? And that it even extinguishes over to being coaches. How can we bring energy if we're not letting our light shine, if we're not illuminating, not only on the court, but off the court? So I think that's amazing. I may have to steal that idea, coach.
Well, and everybody has to say that probably, I would venture to guess that over 75% of people, the very, very first, whether you want to call it Christian song or hymn, whatever it was, This Little Light of Mine. And now we probably learned that song because it was probably the easiest song for us as kids to learn. But as simple as it is, it holds so much meaning.
It does.
That I don't, sometimes you just have to go back and reference it. And we have players who have goals, and you never want to, like you just said, dim their light. So please shine, do whatever you need to do to make those lights brighter. Because that's not going to do anything but make us as a whole better.
That's for sure. I can see this deacon. I grew up at a rural country Baptist traditional church, right? And I could just see the deacon right now singing, and he kept adding his own ad-libs to the song. And one of the things he would always say is, he said, my God gave me the light, so I'm going to let it shine, right? And so often, not only that light, but our peace and our joy and the things that we bring with ourselves to work, and to the gym. There are many things throughout the day I know probably make you want to come in that office, close the door, and say, y'all give me a minute, right? Yeah. And so I often think about that deacon when he sings that verse, because it's like there's so many things throughout the day that can cause me to turn my switch off, and clip it down. But he specifically would sing that verse because he'd say, but God gave it to me. So if he gave it to you, didn't give it to me, so you can't take it back. Just like joy. If you didn't give it to me, you cannot remove or renege it from me. And so I often think about that as I move as a servant leader, that, in this life, we're going to have trouble. But just like the word says, take heart, I've overcome the world. So I can keep my light shining. I can keep, as your switch you have there, turned on, because I know God gave that to me in order to illuminate for those to find him. That's so good, coach. That's so good. I the transition, right? That's one of the bigger things that I wanted to kind of hit on, in this coaching thing of all sports and athletic professionals, that there's shifts, right? And time to transition and move. And so being in the game for a little bit, you have some coaches that listen to this, that may have just entered or maybe have been in it for a while. In decision-making, right? There's a level of discernment. I tell people, I feel like I know I have an advantage, like on all of my fronts in leadership. I know that I consult, a higher power. I know I consult God in my moves. And then I have to have discernment to know when it's time to move. So not only with this shift, coach, it's just that it's relevant to this question, but in your career, two parts. How do you use your discernment or consult God when it's time to move, or just in decision making, whatever job that you're on?
Well, I think, I have never believed in, from a career standpoint and things like that. I have never believed in everything happens for a reason. I've always believed in everything happens for a reason with action. Because without my actions, without me leading, without me making decisions, whether it be for me, my career, my family, whoever it is, nothing can happen. And so, I just has always been. I've known what's for me, and I've been 10 toes down when it comes to that. And I feel like for the most part I've stuck to that in my career, making, especially when it came to being a head coach. I was good with being an assistant coach, and things happen, but I was straight. I had really no desire at the time to be a head coach. And then, the situation happens and I have opportunity to go 40 minutes from my mom and dad and family, to be a head coach. Now, I guess the decision making came when, you're like Gardner Webb. Okay, who knows where Gardner Webb is? Well, not very many people are going to raise their hands. But, I think I'm somebody who, I'm going to make the situation how I want it to look. And that was my one and only goal when it came to taking and going to Gardner Webb. If I'm going to take this job, I'm going to take it, I'm going to make it and make it look how I want it to look. I feel like, that's exactly what we did. But, I just think everything happens for a reason with action. And without action, you're probably going to be stagnant.
First of all, I wanted to, and I was so glad I was on mute because you're going to learn something about me. And when you go in and listen to other episodes, I'm excitable, right? And so you're going to hear a whole bunch of, right, what? Right, I'm that person, right? And so I was just thrown because it was just like, yeah, like we say that often, everything does happen for a reason, but it also threw me, that addition was so powerful because I was just saying, someone asked me yesterday, how did you honor God today? Right. I have people in my life that do that. They truly make you intentional about how we're moving. And so I said, I spend my whole summer trying to encourage student athletes to not only have faith, but work. And I put work in all caps, right? I think Steve Harvey says it, God blesses your hustle. Right. And so when you added that, I think that was so, one, right on time, but two, perfect. I have never heard that before because everything does happen for a reason. However, with action, I think so often we pray and we ask God for things. My pastor always gives that common story about the man that was stuck on the island, and then he was praying and asked God for help. And then the helicopter came. He said, no, I know God is going to come and help me. And so the helicopter would allow to leave. And then a boat comes. He says, no, I know God is coming. And then finally nothing else comes. And he's like, Lord, come on. Like, seriously? He's like, yeah, man, you did. And I sent it for you. You just take action to go and get on the plane or the boat. And so I think sometimes we make God so unattainable. I think we make him so far-fetched sometimes, when legitimately, as the word says, faith without works is dead. And if we have the faith in him, yes, that's a part of it, but we have to have that action as well to move. And when we can do that, he blesses those footsteps, blesses that hustle. And I had never heard it so perfectly put until you just said that.
Oh, and the action may not always be the easy decision. Sometimes it's the decision that one of my coaches, Rick Insel, I keep this with me to this day. Success is built on inconvenience. So you may have to walk another path. You may have to, wait on a train and cross some tracks and go through the trenches to get there. But if you want it, you'll do what you need to do. And that's where that action comes.
Come on now. And see, here's the thing about that. First of all, shout out to you. That's your assistant coach, you said?
No, one of my head coaches.
One of your head coaches, shout out to him, because I'm stealing that one too and putting it in my arsenal. But I think it's, it's one of those things where sometimes I was looking the other day, my god sister got married this weekend, right? And so it was all the things that a wedding brings, all the emotions. And, I was getting ready. And there's a scar I have that's kind of like right here. So the dress that I had showed that. Now, mind you, on a day-to-day basis, I don't think about that scar now. It was from a surgery that was 3 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I saw it and I'm like, huh. So now that I see it, I'm paying attention to it. It did not bother me, whatever. But it kind of reminded me of, one, that inconvenience, two, the sacrifice of it, but three, the pain that it brought, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't feel any of those things now, but the scar reminded me of those things. And so where I'm going with this, coach, is two parts. It's one, that as servant leaders and as, Christ followers, we're going to be inconvenienced.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go down paths that we sometimes are like, now, hold on, now, God, like, why you trust me this much, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of that thing, right, when I'm looking, I didn't understand it when I had to, what ended up happening is I lost all feeling on this side. It was a rib that was infringing on some vessels to move and allow circulation to happen, right? And so they removed that rib and all was well. But in the time, I didn't understand it, right? I'm like, I go to the doctor, I try to eat right, try to do what I can do. And what crazy, just out of the whim thing. But in that moment of waiting, right? And in that moment of recuperation, there were things that God showed me that I probably would not have found, listened to, or understood had I not been inconvenienced. And so where I want to shift to that for you, coach, though, is a lot of times in our actions of servant leadership and professionalism, especially in sports, we have a plan and that plan gets derailed, right? We can maybe come up with a whole practice plan, scout report here, that, and the other, and then something comes along to throw a wrench in our plans. I want to target you this way, and speaking to the listeners and even to yourself, as a servant leader, as a head coach, how do you make sure that your temperament stays where it needs to be in consulting God when he moves and shifts some of those plans that you thought that you had on the straight and narrow?
Well, I'll always say, even practice plan, even my life, I was like, we got more of a menu, because on the menu, you choose it. You may not like it, you may like it, but it's more of a menu. But I think it's just a lot of time to myself and prayer, and in those situations, deep breaths. But I'm a listener, and so especially if it's with somebody else. Whatever the situation may be, if it's a group of people, whatever the case, with my staff, whoever, I like to listen first. And I've had to learn that reacting is not always the best first reaction. So I would always rather listen first. In our staff meetings, I always let my staff speak first. I don't, I obviously talk about what we're going to talk about, but allowing them to have their voices and listening and taking notes and things like that. And then after that, responding. That doesn't just help me, that helps them, being confident about having a voice, players being confident having a voice. In our huddles, I always start with, how's everybody doing? Because I think that's important, to just check up on people. Everybody wants to have a voice in whatever they're doing. So I think it's important for me, when you talk about how I respond, I have to listen first. Take it all in. I think that's just, and for me personally, that's always been important.
I think it's very important, coach. And, that is one of those skills and things that I've truly been working on. Actually, right before we got on, I was in a training where that's what we're learning to do. Right. And I think so often we work so hard on those skills that we need as coaches that we fail to realize those intangible skills that actually make us successful human beings. And, I think about all that has to be on our plates, right? And I'm pretty sure you try to find time to go to the gym physically. I'm pretty sure you have to make time for your family and all of these things that we allocate. But one of the things that I know that shifted in my prayer life is becoming a mom, right? So that devotional time looked a little different. Because I could be in my moment and then I feel this, And so, of course, we work on staying physically fit and mentally fit. But what do you do to make sure and ensure that you stay spiritually fit? Talk to us a little bit about what you do to sharpen your iron each day, to make sure you're sharp for those that you lead.
I hesitate because I feel like that's changed. For whatever reason, that's changed in coming here. I have this. I put it right here so you could see it. One of my assistants got me this book, and it's 300. It's Daily Wisdom, 365 Days of Motivational Thoughts.
Nice.
And so I've really, actually, I'm not a reader, so this is way out of my comfort zone. But I've gotten into reading books more. And I feel like for whatever reason that has expounded my way of thinking. I sometimes tend to, I like to walk. I walk a lot, even on campus. And my staff teases me that, if Alex asks you to walk anywhere, you better ask how far is it, because she will walk anywhere. And on those walks, though, I do that because I feel like I can be at one with, I hate to say that because it sounds corny, but that's just me as a person. I guess I'm a little hobo-ish when it comes to outside of basketball. I like to be outside and being with nature and hikes, and just being able to look at this. Me and my daughters all the time when we're in the car, we look at the skies and the clouds and the shapes, and who do we think, if they are familiar with people that have passed and stuff like that, who do we think's behind those clouds, and what's that cloud remind you of, and so and so, that looks like that could be so and so because that cloud is shaped like this, and when we lose people in our life, a lot of the times, we feel like we lose a part of ourselves. And so I use those times to connect, however that needs to look, with those people, because a lot of the people obviously are important to me. So I feel like that's how I never actually realized why I like to walk until now, until talking to you, because that's what I do. So that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense though.
Being able to look up, even I'm so thankful. I joke with my staff, like, when you make these transitions, you become thankful for the little things. Like I went from 0 windows in my office to having 4. Wow. And I'm very thankful for these 4 windows, because I can just look out and just say me a little quick prayer if I need to, and then go ahead about my business.
I love that big time. And but Coach, it is going to look different, right? And I had to learn that, but I think that that's the intentionality of it, right? That I know you feel more connected to him that way. I was laughing because I tell people constantly on this podcast, and one of our servant leaders, and constant listeners and supporters, Robert Knox, who's listening now, we talk about often, I do a God is devotional. And you'll hear that later, right?
Okay.
It truly does get me, because I used to be able to sit, right? I mean, I'm just sitting there in my pretty little journal and take my time and all this or whatever. And now it truly has to be something that's vocal. But what I learned is that now it truly blows my mind at all the things that I can continuously do and be in tune with him that I was missing when I was sitting here writing on the pretty pages. You know what I'm saying? And I think that walking and being in what he created kind of draws you and gives you that sense of him and feeling him, along with being in his presence. So I get it. It makes perfect sense to me. It is, and I'm pretty sure you feel even more sharp to start your day.
And I start just making sure that I'm good. We try to get started just in our household in general. I'm up at 4:30. I'm at the gym by 5. Get a quick little workout in. Those drives, I think you said it earlier, those drives by yourself are very important. No music, no sound, nothing, just being one within yourself, or within, whether it's you praying or thinking, or just being able to be by yourself is always important. Now, I didn't learn that until my older age, how important that was.
But see, that's how it goes sometimes, Coach, big time. I'm reminded a lot of, again, those trials, right? And like it says in the word, trials worketh patience, and patience worketh hope. And so when we're going through them, we're like, I don't want to be here. I've
Mm-hmm.
never met a person that's just like, yes, I enjoyed every bit of that trial. If you're out there, awesome. It wasn't me though.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and we do and I'm sure many of the sports world does it, but we do our breast cancer awareness pink game every year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it just brings, I'm sure you could agree, for our young ladies, even more so, seeing them watch these individuals with so much pride and strength, and they're sitting
Mm-hmm.
here cheering us on. And I'm telling them, like, see, y'all care about these cell phones and these shoes and your arm sleeve not fitting right and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And these individuals actually are in the trenches fighting a battle on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So all you can do is come out here and you can put on the best fight of your life in this game. And one of the scriptures that I use that night, I keep right here on the front of my phone, right? And so when you mentioned just I wasn't always like that, that's how I shift myself to recognizing what the end game is, like the
Mm-hmm.
movie End Game. And it's James 1:12, and it says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. And so it comforts me to know that in my trial, like I said, everybody is not wanting that trial. Everybody is not choosing to want to be in that space and time.
Mm-hmm.
However, I know what the end game and the
Mm-hmm.
end goal is, that he didn't say, Chelsea, I'm asking you to enjoy it and smile. Chelsea,
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking everything I throw at you that you just, grin and just say it's the best thing ever. But what I'm saying to you is remain steadfast.
Mm-hmm.
Remain steadfast. And so, Coach, I'm going to shift that to you a little bit, because trials do come, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one is exempt. Trials come. How do you remain steadfast when those trials come? And not even in the sports world, but just as a praying mom, a praying wife, a praying woman, how do you remain steadfast into what God has promised when it may seem or may have seemed in the past that everything around you was just going haywire?
Man, don't question it. When I think about what I want in the end, all
Come on.
those trials make sense.
Come
They all
on.
make sense. And when you look at people's I'll just use LSU since they won the national championship. When you look at their games and you look at their last game and their last interview that they did not say, man, what we went through in that game that we just finished playing, really got us. They talk about what we went through during the season. And so I think when you think about, okay, what do I want my end goal to be? You can't question anything that happened in the in-between time of getting or meeting that goal or coming close to that goal. Because all of that in the in-between time is necessary, whether it's hard, easy, mid, whatever, all of that is necessary. So going back to just being confident in whatever decisions you're making, as long as you know you're making whatever decision you need to make for the best of who you are and your purpose. And as long as you're serving, I think we can get lost in that coach title. But realistically, being a coach, what are you really doing? Worried about a sport that I think you said it earlier, can be taken away at any given time. So as long as you're serving, I think that's just the most important part. But being confident and thinking about that end goal during the hard times, I think that's where it's at for me.
I think that's awesome, Coach. And I guess one of the things, a lot of times when individuals see you all on the sidelines, right, on the TV screens, even as your own athletes see you on a day-to-day basis, they don't see the person. And so I like to ask that, because when we do walk away from the sideline and when that last player leaves, life still exists and is happening when they go home and go to sleep. We then have to pick up those other roles that we're in. And one of the things I've learned a long time ago is that, God has never, ever put more on us than we can bear. But I'm going to shift it back to something you said earlier. Things happen for a reason with action. right? And so I've learned over time with trial that there's a reason behind the things that he brings to us.
Mm-hmm.
But much like the menu you mentioned earlier with your practice plan, right? He says more like a menu, right? That's how God is with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is that we can't go and say, well, God, I want a little bit of this today. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll take this trial over here as
Mm-hmm.
long as I can take this blessing over here, right? Because if we
Mm-hmm.
had that right, if we had that, we would never go pluck from the trial.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We
Mm-hmm.
would. But I'm reminded often by a servant leader. His name is Dennis McNulty. He's a brother of ours. I love him. He's if he's not listening now, he's gonna listen later. But he talks about the fruit of the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And he says one of the things that we often miss is that the fruit of the spirit, even though there's multiple fruit, is singular, it's not plural.
Right.
He says, and as servant leaders, we have to ensure that we're exhibiting all of the fruit of the spirit, right?
Yeah.
Not just, well, I'm just going, I'm gonna show a little love today, but see the rest of God, that long suffering, I don't want that, right? And
Right.
that's what we do, unfortunately. But the fruit of the spirit is singular, that we'll experience and have to exhibit those, unfortunately, all of the time. And so much like you opened up with, though, is I'm not questioning it. But what I do know, it's like a song says, the same God right now is the same God back then. So that trial I endured back then, it wasn't a different God.
Yeah.
It was a trial nonetheless, but the same one that delivered me from that moment is the same one that's watching me and is around me as I'm enduring this moment. So I think that was golden, Coach.
Well, and I think, what does that look like? You saying, all right, God, I want to be a college coach. And he says, all right, but I'm going to put you through all this. And then you say, God, I want to be a mom. I want to be a wife, but not only when I'm not a coach. And I say all that to say, you can't, I've never believed in separating family and business or business and pleasure, however you want to look at that. Because you can't, like you just said, you can't pick and choose, I want this, I want that, I want this, but only when I can do this, but I only want to do that when I can't do this. So when you talk about not questioning things, not questioning what he has put in your life, I think that's where, some people are believers and you have to separate the business, you have to separate the family. Well, I'm not certain, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think that that's how our lives were intended by him, to separate all these things.
Coach, that's so good. And I'm telling you, I'm sitting over here taking all this down. I want you to know that. So I just feel like these type of things, like, the word tells us iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. These type of conversations are so necessary, though, because when we're enduring, we feel like it's just me. Mm-hmm. Lord, I know everybody else in the world, everything's going right for them, and I am just enduring.
And I'm struggling. Yeah.
But these type of conversations allow us to understand that, no, it's not just me. And that's why fellowship is important, right? And I know that the season, I hate to say in season, out of season, because honestly, as a coach, that is not a thing, right? And so I'm pretty sure that the worship and fellowship portion is a little bit different, right? Have you found a place, that you and your family like to worship now that you're in Memphis?
Not yet. We've done, I don't know if you've ever listened to Mount Zion in Nashville. They do like an online deal. So Nashville's like 3 hours from us. But we're there now online. And then I still listen to one of my former players. Her dad's a pastor back in North Carolina at Mount Calvary. They do like a Facebook Live deal. So we've only been here, I guess, full time for almost a month with all of us here. So we're kind of just now getting into our weekends as a family. It's only our second weekend together as a family here.
I love it. Coach, that's so good. I just asked because I know when moving, right? I luckily have not have to do that often. But one of the things that when coaches kind of come into Tallahassee, excuse me, that's one of the things. Shout out to Mercedes Corona. She's a new head coach at Tallahassee Community College down here. That's one of the first things. They're like, hey guys, where do you go to church? Where can I worship? Like, and I think that that's huge and big. So I just asked because I know that upon one of the things in shifting to this new place, it's like, okay, what's going to be our new place for this, and what's going to be the schools and this and things like that. So I think that's pretty awesome, Coach. As we kind of start to turn these things, and you'll understand what I mean by God is, there are a few things that I got to kind of ask to enshrine you in, right? To the servant leader families. You don't just get to get in, right? On here, there's a way we got to get you to, pass through here. No, but that God is devotional that I was talking about earlier, how my way of just sharpening my iron and being at one with God has changed now, being a first-time mom. And I used to write. I would have these cute little journals and I'd write and, definitely genuine, but I would take my time and I would say God is, because see, here's the thing, those trials we spoke about, it's easy to forget what he is when all I see is my pain around me, right? I know who he is when them blessings pouring and falling in my lap and when things are going my way. But I can also shift and say, oh no, this can't be. And so I'll say God is, and I'll start writing out all he is. He is amazing. He is a healer. He is, and I just keep going, right? But one of the things that shifted in my life is when I just started kind of rolling it off as I'm taking a shower, and then rolling it off as I'm doing my hair. And what I would find though, Coach, is sometimes I'll be about to run late to work because I'm so at one with him. And it taught me that just like his well is, one that never runs dry, there was no period that I could place over to what he was, because it kept going. So granted, you don't get a long list today in that devotional, but I'm going to throw it at you and I'm going to say God is, and I'm going to draw an imaginary blank right here on the screen. And so, but you only get one answer today.
Okay.
So if I were to say God is, and I drew an imaginary blank on that screen, how would servant leader Alex Sims feel that God is blank?
Peace.
Come on now.
Peace.
She was ready.
Yep. As soon as you said it, I knew what my word was going to be.
What made you put that one, Coach? What made you say that one immediately?
Well, because again, like I said, I feel like when I'm by myself, that's when I find the most peace, is when I'm speaking to him. And, you just feel that calmness come over you. I think when you think about his purpose, I think you think about his purpose and then the purpose that we're actually living in. I feel peace in where I am. And I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be right here where I am today without him.
Come on. Coach, and I'm going to tack on that, because that is often how I feel that as well. Because there's so many things around us on a day-to-day basis that can change that stance quickly. But I've gotten to a place of those trials we spoke about earlier, not having fear, like you spoke about earlier, being inconvenienced, like you spoke about earlier. All of those things work together for my good, as the word says. To a place now where when you learn to lean and trust him, right, and you recognize that he'll bring you out every time, it gives me a peace, because it's like, yeah, this is going all around me. But it's almost like when Jesus would sleep on the boat.
Yep.
And they're like, you sleeping.
You sleep. What you doing?
What you doing? We gonna die. And my prayer has always been, I want that type of peace. I want the type of peace that even when things are not at all going the way that I think that they should, I can have the peace of knowing that God has already promised that he's gonna work it out. And so I think that is so, that's me. Like how you were like, you ain't got to finish that question. Just peace, hush, peace. Because that is the mark of the person who knows where their hope comes from. And I think that's so amazing. One of the things that I tell my just people I'm speaking to is the 9th grader and the 12th grader, between my athletes, right? And trusting God. And so in terms of me, like I said earlier, I'm not God by any stretch, but when we're riding along, you have to take them home and things like that. The senior, when y'all hungry? Yes. I can eat. I mean, and then they get there and the senior's like, I want them this and this and this. Can I have a cookie? Can I have the milkshake? And can I make it large? And can I, right?
Yeah.
That's senior. The ninth grader is like, well, I'll just take a burger. I'm like, you can have more than that. It's okay. No, it's fine. And I always tell people, what's the difference between the senior and the ninth grader? The senior has been around me. They've learned me, they've known me, and they've tried me.
Yeah.
They have no reason to think for a second that they can't ask me for anything.
Yeah.
Because I've delivered, right? I may have gotten on your butt. There may have been times that were rocky with us. There may be times where I maybe have, punished you for something that didn't feel good. But at the end of the day, when there was a need, I met it. Mm-hmm. And so the ninth grader lacks trying.
Mm-hmm.
And so their ability to trust is not the same as a senior. And that's how I apply that piece. And that's how I apply us as we follow on this road of servant leadership, of Christ following, and just being obedient, is that the more we trust him and the more we try him, we'll recognize his ability. And that alone will give you.
Yep. And trusting what you know is a lot of the times more effective than believing in what you don't know. I think you see that a lot I've seen that in my situation right now. You see that in our world when it comes to recruiting. It's just, you always tend to trust what you know instead of believing in what you don't know.
Come on, coach. Come on here. And of course, this is the Servant Leader Coaches Bible Study, where servant leadership truly is at the center, the front, sides, all around what we do, right? And servant leadership, we've seen it. We've seen it on titles of books. We've seen it on podcasts. We talk about it. Some people put in their taglines, and I think that's great, right? But I think more than anything, much like you just said, is trusting what we know. So in order to be servant leaders, though, we have to know what that is. What does that look like? And that was a whole pretty much push and purpose behind the obedience to doing this platform. And so talking about servant leadership, it takes on so many different definitions, but we're asking you, servant leader, Alex Sims, servant leadership, what does it mean to you?
I think it for me, it means that whether it's a player, family, whoever, all my circle will always say that when I needed her, and even when I didn't know I needed her, she was there. I think that's what servant leadership is.
Mm-hmm. I think it's golden. And I think more than anything, even to add to your point, is just the presence, right? We can always talk about what we can render to somebody or what we can do and will do, but it literally is, like you mentioned earlier, when I put my toe down in the gym, how is my energy? What am I bringing, right? What are they watching me do? How am I pouring into your world and your life? And I think that when we can do that, it brings about a change, right? Because a person can truly see the hand of God in my actions, right? Because we're supposed to be his hands and feet. So I love that. Coach, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to tell y'all, she tweeted out, it was so funny because, we had kind of messaged back and forth here and there a while back. And then I saw things, I was like, thank you, God, because I was supposed to reach back out. And glad that I did. I saw the last podcast you did. And he said, and you know me, I love a podcast. And I do you now? Do you?
I sure do. And this is my time by myself today. So that was good. I'm not a closed door person. So this is the first time today that I was able to be here by myself.
Well, I really appreciate that. Real quick, hold on. Bro, Robert, you still there? Sometimes we have, as I say, come on in the room. Some of them still like our old school way, and he is one of them. Hey, bro, I don't know if you wanted to say anything before we got off.
Yes, Coach. I'm gonna send you a church that my first lady preaches at. She travels from North Carolina. But it's literally right across the border. Okay. I've been with her times. Every time I've been there, it's like the people are. I'm looking at text her right now. And she's actually address. Give me 1 second. But amazing work. I know Gardner Webb's gonna miss you. I followed you as well. I love women's basketball. I love watching women's basketball.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
our middle school girls got to listen to you while you're talking because we're coaching them right now. So,
Aww.
Well, good.
New Life Community Church.
New Life Community Church.
And that's 7197 Craft Road.
I got it.
Olive Branch.
Oh, yeah.
Once we got to the airport and we stay in Memphis, it's a straight shot. I know it's not far because it seems like
no, that's not far at all.
Gotcha. Yep. So check them out. She goes about 3 times a year. Sometimes I go with her at least once a year because during basketball season usually goes around that time. But I've experienced their ministry to be amazing. So, and I ask if she knows anybody else.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Great word. And Chelsea, it's good to be back. It's summertime.
All the time, bro. We appreciate you, man.
No problem.
We'll have quite a few of them for I call them the old school crew, right? And they still love and we'll always do that. So I know typically when he's on, he always has a good, brief, and joyful word. And so I wanted to give him that. But Coach, I truly do, again, thank you for your time. This move of God can't happen without willing vessels like yourself. We truly admire what you do and just, again, letting that light shine. And you now have forever fans in us.
Thank you.
Right now. Anything that you need, you just reach out. We're going to be here ready for whatever you need.
I appreciate that. And now that you've come back, now you can't go nowhere.
Oh, no, we're here. When they say booked and busy, we here.
Yeah, we already here, huh?
We here, Coach. We here. So anytime you see it, you just pop on in here. We be here. And the funny thing, the blessing is just because, you know, how we're all coaches, we're busy. Sometimes I'll pop on here and I'm like, hey, it'll be a person we hadn't seen in a while or, things like that. So it's always really good. But yep, not going anywhere.
Good. Send me some, I think you talked about your Bible study.
Yes, I'll send it to you. Yep.
Yeah.
I got you, Coach. We'll add you on that list for sure.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
No, and before you go, if you could just bow your head real quick, not if you're driving, no. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much just for your patience, your kindness, your love, your genuine nature, and your ability to be able to allow past the cross, such as you did today. We thank you right now just for the words that have been spoken. And the hope is that you just allow us to continue to decrease so that we, can just be the lights that you would allow us to be for your glory. Help us to continue to keep that switch on, like Coach Sims has showed us earlier, in how we walk and we move and we talk and all of our roles, not just on the sideline, Lord God, but in our homes as moms, as husbands, as wives, as family members, and all of those things, Lord God. Help us to just be whatever it is that you need. But most of all, Lord God, I ask that you just decrease us and help us to illuminate so that those that may not know you can find you. In your son, Jesus' name, we'll always pray. Amen.
Amen.
My favorite line of the podcast, servant leader, Alex Sims, you are now a part of the servant leader family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I will definitely see you those things. We appreciate you all so much. Thank you guys for listening. We're going to see